see my time is up.
And we'll hear back from you on rebuttal. Thank you, counsel.
I am ready when you are, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. My name is Sarah Sanders, and I am counsel for the appellees Rancho San Diego High, Clarence Murphy, and Lily Teen. Although it is true that Tinker says that students do not shed First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate, these rights do not mean that a student may speak his mind in any way that he pleases. A student's speech can be regulated by Tinker when it concerns speech or action that intrudes upon the work of the schools or the rights of other students. This court should find that the district court properly applied the Tinker standard to Mr. Gomez's off-campus speech for the following two reasons. Firstly, Mr. Gomez's speech had sufficient nexus to Rancho High to be assessed under Tinker. And secondly, the school reasonably foresaw a substantial disruption that made the suspension of Mr. Gomez appropriate. The appellant's claim fails because the Tinker standard applies to Mr. Gomez's off-campus speech, and as such, the court should affirm the district court's summary judgment. To my first point, according to McNeil, a school may regulate speech under Tinker when there is sufficient nexus. The Ninth Circuit recognized in Tinker that when a student's speech can present a likely harm to the school environment, the school can then regulate it. Here, Mr. Gomez joined a study group meeting uninvited and unannounced, and it was said that he derailed the meeting. He took over the screen share. He displayed graphic images of dead animals with plastic spilling out of its guts. And one student, Ms. Fitzhughes, was subjected to these images and was reduced to tears. She went to a teacher and was crying when she told her that she could no longer focus on an upcoming exam and was extremely disturbed by the language that Mr. Gomez used. Mr. Gomez's plan to further display these images during class could emotionally disturb more students.
Counsel, isn't there a possibility that Miss Fitzhughes is just particularly sensitive? Schools display images of war, and it's part of learning to be exposed to uncomfortable subjects. So how can you say that other students will be distressed as well?
Well, Your Honor, I would be speculating to speak to Ms. Fitzhughes' mindset. In CR, the victims were subjected to sexual harassment. The court actually referred to that as kind of like a hallway talk using sexual innuendos among students. I don't think those students were too sensitive in that situation, whereas maybe other students wouldn't have been with those sexual innuendos. It's not about whether or not she was sensitive, it's about the reaction that she endured. And here she had actual emotional distress, which caused her not to focus in school. And the second point in McNeil has to do with whether the speech would reach or impact the school. And in Weinar, the school found that the student's online speech was able to be regulated there. And here, Mr. Gomez wanted to divert students' attention by wearing this t-shirt, "Plastics Kill, Kill Plastics," and by displaying the graphic images of dead animals.
Counsel, at this time, pending before the Supreme Court is a case out of the Third Circuit, the BL case, that explicitly ruled, that when students engage in activity on their social media, on their personal social media devices, that the school cannot reach that. So why should we not follow BL in this instance and then just not allow the school to reach the chat pics or the zip meeting?
Well, Your Honor, as you know, that is a persuasive case because it's in the Third Circuit, and it was actually just recently granted cert in the last 2 weeks for the Supreme Court. So we actually don't know what the holding will be after the Supreme Court rules it. However, that was a Snapchat social media post and that had nothing to do with the school. The students just expressed her opinion on cheerleading, and the school took offense to that. And in the Third Circuit, it found that there was no nexus to the school because the social media account had no connection with it. And here, Mr. Gomez interrupted a student-led ZIP meeting, and that actually leads me into my third point about sufficient nexus, is that Mr. Gomez used school resources to spread his message to other students, and this is sufficiently related to the school. Mr. Gomez used a school-issue laptop to display the pictures, and he used a software called Zip, which was pre-installed by the school in order for students to conduct their
And Council, was there any policy at the school about how the students could use their laptops and their Zip account?
No, Your Honor, there was no policy. The school was still merging into online school, and there was a lot of new applications going on and a lot of adjustments being made given the pandemic. But we know that Mr. Gomez not only used school resources, but was addressing students as well in his speech. And with the Chatpix post, for instance, on page 11 of the record, we know he's addressing students because he says, even our school's lunch program, tell them to stop feeding our students. And he knowingly admitted to having 148 student followers when he posted the Chatpix account on his social media. Here, the totality of circumstances indicate that Mr. Gomez's speech had sufficient nexus to Rancho High, allowing it to be assessed under Tinker. And to my second point, under Tinker, there must be a reasonable forecast of substantial disruption or material interference with the school that collides with the rights of other students to be secure and let alone. The potential disturbance was reasonably foreseeable because Mr. Gomez had a history of interference. Both Dariano and Levine show that a school can predict a disruption when there's a record of problematic behavior. Earth Day of 2019, Mr. Gomez was upset about the broad focus of the environmental speaker and marched across the stage while blocking the speaker with a poster. Additionally, Mr. Gomez planned to wear the t-shirt during class and display graphic images as his Zip background. Page 13 of the record indicates that he even planned to send an email out to the student body with these pictures attached. The school had a concern that Mr. Gomez would be equally, if not more, disruptive this year.
How, though, is the t-shirt any different from the armband in Tinker and the button in Chandler? Isn't it just, I mean, he's not actually interfering. He's just simply sitting there, wearing the t-shirt. So isn't this the kind of behavior that we want to encourage our students to do?
Well, Your Honor, it's entirely plausible that if Mr. Gomez had simply planned to wear the t-shirt on Earth Day, there would have been no issue. The school doesn't oppose to Mr. Gomez's environmental causes. That's evidenced by the fact that the school has a clean water program, and they had Earth Day environmental speakers come in talking to students about recycling and environmental awareness. It was the fact that the t-shirts, in addition with the disturbing images that he not only shared with the student, that he had planned to share with the student body and display as backgrounds, was the cause for the reasonable forecast of substantial disruption. And we know...
Didn't the vice principal himself say that, the boxes are pretty small? So how much of, why is this a substantial disruption?
Well, Your Honor, again, it's not just about the t-shirts, it's also about the images as well. And we know that what the pictures did to a student already, it caused a student to not be able to focus on an upcoming pre-calculus exam when she was at a pre-calculus study group. The school has deference in determining what can elicit a substantial response from students. And like Pinard, the court found that the students' athletes' refusal to board the bus in protest wasted time and resources expended by the school. Here, Mr. Gomez's planned demonstration would waste class time and the teacher's efforts by diverting students' attention. And it's worth noting that he didn't tailor his speech to the necessary audience like the petition and complaint in Pinard. He could have gone directly to the school's lunch program and explained his concerns, but he decided to use extreme language to promote his environmental activism. And also, the Ninth Circuit held in CR that the student's harassment was found to interfere with other students' rights to be safe and secure. Here, his speech purported to infringe on the rights of other students. Again, his encounter with Miss Fitzhughes illustrates how his conduct amounts to bullying and harassment like in CR. He also stated...
Also, in Dariano, where, admittedly there was a T-shirt case as well, and the school handled that by asking the students to turn their T-shirts inside out or gave them the option to have an excused absence. So in this case, couldn't the school, if it truly thought there was going to be a disturbance, couldn't they have just suspended Mr. Gomez, for the day, or somehow turned off his camera? I mean, this 3-day suspension seems overly harsh.
Well, Your Honor, in order for a suspension to be appropriate, it has to be tailored to prevent the potential disruption. In Levine, the school reasonably forecasted a substantial disruption, and the court even admitted in that case that the school might have overreacted. In Levine, due to a graphic poem, the police came to the student's house, confiscated guns, admitted the student into a psych ward, which he had to be de-admitted in order to go back to school. It was this whole entire scenario, and even there, the court admitted we have to give deference to the school and how they tailor their punishment as long as it prevents the potential disruption. Here, Mr. Gomez's purported disturbance justified his suspension for the remainder of the week. The Ninth Circuit has held that schools should be given deference as to how it responds to disruptive speech. The punishment here served to encompass Earth Day. Therefore, Mr. Gomez's suspension was an appropriate response. Additionally, the school needs to provide a safe learning environment where students feel safe and secure in order to further their conducive learning environment. Although students have First Amendment rights, they cannot use the school as a personal podium advocating for their beliefs. Here, Mr. Gomez is not protected by the First Amendment and can be regulated under Tinker. In conclusion, Your Honor, the court should affirm the decision of the district court. I see my time is up. May I briefly conclude? Thank you.
You may.
The court should affirm the decision of the district court because Rancho High properly regulated Mr. Gomez's speech to protect its students. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. And